What is up, everyone? Welcome to my personal podcast. My name is Adrian. I'm 25 years old, and as you can tell already, probably, I'm Peruvian, which means I was born in the amazing country of Peru, located in South America. Now, I like to talk a little bit about my country, but before doing that, I'd like to remark two things. First of all, English is not my first language, so if I have some trouble speaking it, if I have some grammar issues, or sentence issues, or if I get too slow at times, just please bear with me because I'm doing my best effort possible. Second of all, I'm not a journalist. I'm just this simple, humble podcaster who's trying to learn about a little bit more about his own country. So I don't know how precise I'm gonna be with the data and the facts. I'm just trying to give a overall view to this thing that's going on. So without further ado, let's introduce my country. You've probably heard about Peru more because of three main aspects. First of all, there's tourism. Peru is big on tourism. I think our largest touristic attraction is Machu Picchu, well, at least the most famous one. Machu Picchu, this city which was built between the mountains at 3,000 meters over the sea level. That's right, Machu Picchu, you probably heard about it. We also have our amazing culinary skills. That's right, Peru is well known internationally for making amazing, delicious food, and that's probably why you know Peru for it. So Machu Picchu, food, and most recently we've been known because of our amazing soccer team. We hadn't have such a good soccer team since before 2015 when Ricardo Gareca assumed the coach position of the Peruvian soccer team, and since he did, we actually made it to the World Cup. That's right, after 36 years of not playing in the World Cup, we actually went to the World Cup, and we also made it to the final match of this Copa America tournament, which gathers all the teams from the American continent. We made it to the finals against Brazil after 44 years, which is amazing. But unfortunately, you've probably recently heard about Peru because of much worse and much sadder news. Unfortunately, we have become the most damaged country of 2020 because of the coronavirus pandemic. To the extent of, I found an article in this newspaper called Gestión. I don't remember how to say gestión in English, but it's related to the economy. So this Gestión newspaper said that we were about to enter a triple crisis. That's right, triple crisis, which luckily we save ourselves from. We now are just at a double crisis, which is still a pretty bad crisis. But let's talk about it part by part. So we have first of all the sanitary crisis, the health crisis caused directly by the coronavirus pandemic. So we used to be the country with the fastest answer to the coronavirus problem. We applied the lockdown measures almost a week after the first coronavirus incident took place in Peru. We did the lockdown thing a week after, and we were in lockdown for 3 months. 3 straight months we were in lockdown. That caused many jobs to be paralyzed. We'll be going that in a second. But unfortunately, even with the lockdowns and the restrictions of wearing masks and not going to your job and not getting out of your house, we actually achieved 30,000 deaths because of coronavirus during this year. And even with those 30,000 deaths, allegedly there's this excess of deaths number that accounts for 70,000 deaths. There's an excess of 70,000 deaths in Peru during 2020, and 30,000 of those deaths are because of coronavirus. There are 40,000 dead people that have not been registered as coronavirus deaths that we are still trying to find out why they died for. But apparently they also died from coronavirus. The only problem is that they're not being registered. So we have that. We have 93 dead people for each 100,000 citizens because of coronavirus, and we have 200 deaths a day. Sorry. There's this very famous clip from this deputy in Spain, I guess, that said that Spain had the worst coronavirus management and that only Peru was worse, which always hits hard on Peruvian self-esteem. But well, anyway, hospitals and ICUs are the intensive care units, have collapsed. You either have the money, but you don't have the space to get treated for, or you don't have money at all to get treated for coronavirus. Uh, yeah, so we're basically waiting for. I mean, after the lockdown ended, the government's plan was just to wait for the vaccine, pretty much. So we have that sanitary crisis going on. We also have this economic crisis. Apparently, according to this other article, which I'll be probably putting in here, um, the economy will enter into a 12% recession. That's right. We economically were very, very damaged. The jobs and the work overall had to be paralyzed, and we're entering a 12% recession. And our GDP is gross domestic product, but in Spanish it's PBI or PBI, which stands for Producto Bruto Interno. It's just GDP, right? Our GDP is gonna decrease from 14 to 15% this year. And unfortunately, 70% of the whole country's economy is informal. That means not only that most of our economy does not follow the alleged rules and laws that we have for it, but also 70% of economically available people that actually can work, they have to go into the streets. They need street interaction to perceive their income. So without any street interaction, I mean, during the lockdowns, there was a huge amount of street interaction in spite of the lockdowns, because people actually had to go to work. They couldn't do the internet work, which we call teletrabajo in Peru. The distance work from your computer was not available for 70% of our economically available population. So not only they actually unfortunately help to spread the virus, but if they don't go into the streets, they won't get any income. They won't earn any money. So that's why we have an economic crisis as well. And we barely escaped a third and political crisis because our president was about to be impeached this Friday. That's right. There's been this ongoing battle between Congress and the government. Well, the president, which is called President Vizcarra, because of many reasons, right? But unfortunately, some audios were released last week, which include President Vizcarra. This has to do a lot with this Richard Singh character, which, according to this audio, was giving instructions to the president about what to do, what not to do. And also, the president received this Richard Singh guy into the palace of government. I don't know how to call it. He received him into the government, and most of his visits were not registered. And the president was instructing his assistants to like cover up this meetings that he had with this Richard Singh character. By the way, Richard Singh is a salsa or cumbia singer, I think, which makes everything more hilarious. It's almost a political soap opera at this point. But the Congress voted this Friday to impeach or not to impeach Vizcarra. And fortunately for our governance, for our governability, for the Peruvian stability, Vizcarra was not impeached. But however, his credibility has been severely damaged. So I don't know how the population is gonna believe now what Vizcarra is going to tell them, not only about the coronavirus pandemic, but anytime there's any political crisis at all. I don't know how we're going to believe Vizcarra now. So we're technically still living this small political crisis, but it's mostly sanitary and economic, right? So that's unfortunately why Peru is the most damaged country of 2020. We have the highest numbers, the highest coronavirus numbers in the world. And as a conclusion, many people try to find people to blame. So who would be to blame in this case? Many people like to blame the population for not taking into action the measures that the government was mandating, I guess. Many people went into the streets. They organized huge parties, which just helped spread the virus around. And but there's this other section of the population who want to blame only the president because apparently his administration was not enough, and it was clearly not enough to face this coronavirus incident, well, the pandemic. But there's this other faction that actually defends the president, not because they actually believe everything the president says, but because they know that our health system has been one of the worst health systems in the world probably for the last 30, 40 years, I think. So it's a problem that has been going on through the decades, right? It's not just because of this government. I mean, this government could have stood up and placed some solutions, but I guess the precarity, right? It was such a bad health system that there was no president that could actually fix it in just one government. And Vizcarra is not an actually elected, democratically elected president. He's the replacement of our PPK president who was actually impeached during 2018, I think. Yeah, that was the time. So I know Peru is actually undergoing this crisis. It doesn't affect the whole population at the same rate. For example, I like to acknowledge the privilege that I have that my family is economically stable, and most importantly, they're healthy. We're all healthy right now. So I acknowledge my privilege. I know I'm not going through such a bad situation as other people in my country, but that doesn't mean I cannot talk about it, right? And I cannot have like empathy for my fellow Peruvians. Well, possible solutions, it'll be really hard to tell at this point. I don't know about the economic one, but we're pretty much waiting for the vaccine in here. So hopefully we'll get out of this with the least amount of deaths possible after the ones that we have already had. And I think that's pretty much it. I know this is not such a happy introduction to the English area of my podcast, but that's how I wanted to introduce my country. I wanted to introduce it through the reality of what it's actually living, and not just like decorated with candy and stuff. Sugar coated. That's how you say sugar coated. Well, that has been all, I think. My name was Adrian, and I know today is Sunday, but I'll be uploading all my English versions of my podcast every Friday. I'll be talking about Peru and some personal issues that I'm always concerned about. But that has been all. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll be seeing you or listening to you or reading you in the next episode. See you guys.